Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to review the Los Gatos real estate market analysis for April of 2009. My name is Robert Whitelaw. I'm a real estate broker in the state of California. I'm also a member of the National Association of Realtors and a certified ePro. Now let's go ahead and give you my contact information if you'd like to see any of the other videos I've produced covering different markets in my local area here in Silicon Valley. You can find those at www.soldbyrobert.com, along with my weekly podcast and other articles I've written on real estate. If you'd like to get in contact with me via email, just send those to robert@soldbyrobert.com. If you'd prefer to call via telephone, just use 408-852-0525 to get in touch. And if you'd prefer to use AOL Instant Messenger, Google Talk, or Yahoo IM, the screen name to get to me is the Rebel Broker. If you're using Skype, just use Rebel Broker. And of course, referrals are always appreciated. If you or anyone you know is interested in real estate in the Silicon Valley area, please feel free to get in touch with me. And if you're not interested in real estate in the Silicon Valley area, but anywhere else in the United States, I can find the right agent for you no matter where you are. So get in touch with it using any of the methods listed above, and I'll be happy to help you achieve your real estate goals. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the supply and demand numbers for Los Gatos for April of 2009. It's actually a little bit better news than last month. So let's go ahead first and take a look at the inventory numbers. Now, you can see obviously the inventory numbers are still going up. Inventory is up 13.69% from the same time last year. Just to clear up what this chart is actually showing us, it's showing us just the month of April going all the way back to 1999. So for this time of year, just this time of year, this is a great graph to sort of just compare year to year and see how far we've come. Now, as I said, inventory is up 13.69%. That's 23 more homes on the market in 2009 than in 2008. That gives us a grand total of 191 homes currently on the market in Los Gatos. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the homes that were added to the market in this particular, in April of 2009. And the good news is that's actually down a bit from the same time last year. That's down 10.29%. That means we listed 7 fewer homes in April of 2009 than we did in April of 2008. That gave us a total number of homes listed as 61. And then finally, our sales numbers for Los Gatos. We're actually doing fairly well. Sales are up 13.64% in Los Gatos. That's 3 more homes sold this year than at the same time last year, for a total number of homes sold of 25. Now, the next number we tend to look at is the ratio between the total inventory and the number of homes sold, and that gives us one of 2 ways of looking at the market. You can either look at it as how many months worth of inventory we currently have on hand, or you can look at it if you're someone who's more on the selling side of the equation, what kind of competition there is for each home that sells. And that number stands at 7.64. So to put that into context, we have about 7.5 months of inventory. If everything stayed as it is right now, it would take us about 7.5 months to get everything sold off. If you're a seller, you have about 7.5 competitors if you want to get your home sold. So that's sort of an indicator of how much competition you have as a seller. Now, what's interesting is this number is down dramatically from last month. Last month it was at 17.27, and that was primarily because of a big drop in sales, but inventory obviously has still gone up. Now, the ratio for the county, we talked about 7.64 being the ratio for Los Gatos this month. The ratio for the county was 5.4. So again, we are performing poorly compared to the average for the county in general, which is a little bit unusual. Los Gatos, throughout much of this downturn market, had been performing far better than the county in average. So clearly we've gotten to the point now in Los Gatos where a lot of the factors we were worrying about in other communities we're now worrying about in Los Gatos. So something definitely needs to happen to bring these inventory numbers back under control, but at least things aren't as bad as they were last month. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the same numbers just over past months. First, we'll look at inventory numbers, and this is just going back chronologically all the way to December of 2007, so you'll want to keep in mind that there are going to be seasonal influences here. You can see that in general the inventory has just gone right on up. Now, from March to April of 2009, we saw inventory increase by 0.053%, so a very small increase. In fact, so small we can just call that flat. Inventory has remained relatively flat from last month. We have 1 more home in inventory than we did last month, and that's actually pretty good news considering the type of market that we're in right now. That's actually not bad. And we would, in a more robust market, we might even have seen that number go down. as overall inventory goes, just because April is usually that first month when you start to see maybe a few of the sales happening for the summer season. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the number of homes listed. We can see that's obviously dramatically down from a pretty high jump last month. It's down 25.61%. That's 21 fewer homes listed in April of 09 than in March of 09. Total number of homes sold. This is really gonna cheer a lot of people up because it's a nice big jump in the sales numbers. It's 127.27% from last month. So between March and April, that number went up 127.27%. That's 14 more homes sold in April than in March. So in general, that's really good news. It's obviously not enough to call it a trend, but at least it's an increased number from last month. It's increased from last year. So that is good. Now, what we'll also see here is that this goes hand in hand with some other data that we'll talk about in a moment, that I think shows that one good thing about Los Gatos is they're reacting to the change in the market a little bit more quickly than some other areas did, and making those corrections earlier. And we can talk a little bit about that in a bit. But first, let's get into the short sales and foreclosures data, because there has been a bit of a shift this month in this data. Now, this month we had short sales at 8%, foreclosures at 12%, and overall conventional sales at 80%. Now, that's actually very good news, and it's fairly typical for a community like Los Gatos to not have short sales and foreclosures dominating the marketplace, as they do in a lot of other areas and in the county in general. But if we look at last month, we can see we've actually sort of moved in the wrong direction. Now, last month we had no short sales. We had 9% of the homes that sold being foreclosures and 91% being conventional. So we've actually given up some ground. The number of homes that are getting sold that are conventional is decreasing, and the number of homes that are short sales and foreclosures is increasing. This is precisely the opposite of what's happening in other communities and in the county. Most folks are in the exact opposite position, where they saw 70-80% of their homes were short sales and foreclosures, or 60%, all those numbers, and those numbers are going down. So we're seeing most other communities losing short sale and foreclosure style sales to conventional sales. In Los Gatos, we're seeing the exact opposite. So what does that mean for Los Gatos? Well, I think it means that in terms of the cycle of the market, Los Gatos is lagging behind. But in general, it appears that Los Gatos is moving through this cycle quicker than a lot of other areas of the county. Now, we'll see how that pans out over the coming months. I think how things perform in this selling season of the summer will really kind of give us a little bit more perspective on how good things are or how bad things are for Los Gatos. But this trend, I haven't seen it happening enough months now for us to call this a full trend. Remember, we don't get a lot of big numbers in Los Gatos. It's a smaller community, so the sample size is relatively small. But this will be something definitely to keep an eye on in coming months, to see if we're starting to see a trend or if this is just a one-off. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at home prices. Again, this is just past years. So this is the same month of April, going all the way back to 1999. And we can see how prices have performed. And we can see that here in 2009, we're basically down to prices that reflect about 2002. Now, what's interesting about that is you'll notice that it's a big buildup, and then suddenly it just drops. And I think what's most interesting to note about that is that Los Gatos adjusted quicker. It took a lot. We stretched price adjustments over 2 years to 3 years in some areas, as people sort of got their heads wrapped around the fact that prices were down and resisted that as much as possible. Now, I think Los Gatos has benefited from sort of watching things crumble all around their community as far as prices are concerned. So I think a lot of sellers in their minds have already really accepted the idea that prices are down, and so the homes are selling. Obviously, we had really good sales numbers this month as far as volume of sales, and folks were willing to take not a loss, because I think in Los Gatos we've enjoyed so much increase in property values that even for a lot of folks, going down to a price like this, unless they bought within the last few years, are still taking a pretty good profit off of their property. Now, so this is the average home price, and it was down 45.76% from the same time last year. And that is huge. That is an $873,419 drop cash-wise in average price. But the average home price was $1,035,326. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the median. What's interesting about the median this month is it tends to be a little bit closer to the true average than we've seen in past years. Now, the median price was down 39%, or a dollar change of $610,500. The median price stood at $955,000. So what that basically tells us is while that the homes that sold were weighted a little below the average price, but not substantially so as we've seen, first instance in 2008 and 2007. Now, the highest priced single-family residence in Los Gatos was at 150 Blueberry Hill Drive. That sold for $1,910,000, but it was originally listed for $2,199,500. That home was on the market for 70 days. Now, the lowest priced single-family residential home in Los Gatos was on 210 Thomas Drive, and that sold for $570,000 with an original list price of $799,000, and that was on the market for 118 days. Now, the average price per square foot in Los Gatos was $548.07. That was down from last month's average price per square foot of $567.75. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at home prices just over past months, see what sort of trends we've seen there. Now, again, this is a cyclical situation, so remember that we would normally tend to see market fluctuations here. Now, what's interesting is in the last 6 months or so, we've seen our peak in January, which is a little bit unusual. Usually the winter months are when things are in decline. But you can see overall the trend is clearly down. There's really nothing we can get from this that gives us any idea of where things are going. I think that the biggest thing to take from this is that a pretty big adjustment in price has taken place in Los Gatos. We'll see how that pans out over the remaining of the summer. I personally don't think we're going to see things jumping down a whole lot from where it is right now. Right now, anybody who looks at the numbers can see prices are down substantially. There's a lot of great deals to be had in Los Gatos. Los Gatos is a very desirable community. Everything from education to parks to diverse architecture to downtown. Very desirable location. So while we've seen a huge decrease over the last year, obviously the prices we're at now are able to encourage pretty substantial buying. So it wouldn't surprise me if maybe we see it go down a touch before we head fully into the summer months, but I wouldn't expect to see it to go down much more. Now, it may actually spike a little bit in the summer months because more sales are likely to occur, so we may see some properties that have been on the market a little bit longer that have been holding on to a higher asking price. Some of those might go through, and because we have such a small sample size of homes in the market in Los Gatos, that may artificially boost the number. But again, I review that every month, so I'll point out any of those unusually high-priced homes that end up getting sold. Now, let's go ahead and review what's happened between March and April. The price has gone down 16.36% in Los Gatos. That's a dollar change of $202,483. Now, the median home price has actually remained relatively unchanged. In fact, it's only increased 0.53%. That's $5,000 higher in April than it was in March. And what that indicates is just where the volume of homes, so the volume of homes that were higher priced has actually just minorly gone up between March and April. And because of the closeness between the average home price and the median home price in April, we can see that's a pretty true average. In other words, if 20 homes sold, 10 of them sold above average price and 10 of them sold below. So in this case, you might say 7 or 8 of them sold above asking price and 12 or 13 of them sold below. So just weighted a little bit more towards home below the average sales price. Now let's go ahead and take a look at how many days it's taking to get homes sold in Los Gatos. This is also data that can tend to be skewed pretty largely one direction or another because we have such a small sample size of homes in Los Gatos. But this month's numbers are actually pretty accurate. I went through and reviewed them. We didn't have any single home that had been on the market for an exceptionally long period of time that was sort of really throwing the numbers up into the high range. In fact, the number we're going to give right now for 2009, I think, is a very realistic expectation for sellers right now. About 69 days to get your home sold in Los Gatos in April of 2009. And I'd say going forward, that's very realistic. So if you're a seller trying to think to yourself, I've done everything else right. I've picked the right agent. I've cooperated completely with them, and I've done what I need to do to get my home in a completely sellable situation. I would guess that 60 to 70 days is a very realistic number for you as far as setting expectations on when you should have your home sold. Now, of course, if you're a seller trying to get that home sold, you should be reviewing what you're doing with your agent at least every 10 days. Just so that you can see if it's working. If nobody is showing up to view your house when it gets listed, that's clearly an indicator that perhaps some modifications need to be made. But if you get to this 60 to 70 day period of time and your home has not sold, you need to have a serious reevaluation just on your own of what you want to do. That may include consulting with your agent about the possibility of moving on to another agent. Particularly if time is important to you and you really need to get this home sold, you may want to search out an agent who is approaching things maybe a little bit more aggressively. All right, now the days to sell is up 18.97% from the same time last year. That's 11 more days to get a home sold in April of 2009 than April of 2008. The lowest days on market in April was 0, so one home sold before it ever even got into the multiple listing service. And, I've had a few folks contact me and ask, well, how does that happen? And, well, there's really two ways, and it depends on what's going on with the agent who has the listing and the relationship they have with the seller. A home can sell in 0 days if the agent fully has the intention of putting that home on the multiple listing service, but for whatever reason, through their own contacts and sphere of influence type of things, basically all the people they know, that they've let know about this listing before it went on the MLS, one of those folks ended up buying it. Now, that's always possible. That happens every once in a while. A good agent always keeps a nice list of buyers that they've worked with in the past and also buyers that have contacted them and really markets it before. It's called preliminary marketing in my case, where I'll send it off to a lot of different folks and do direct mailings or do direct emailings. That will often sell the property. There's also sometimes an agreement where the seller does not want the home mass marketed to begin with or at all, so they keep the listing in-house and only try to sell it using those methods. So sometimes that's the preferred way to go for the seller, and for whatever reason that's important to them, so it doesn't get reported so they have multiple listing service until the property is already sold. Now, the longest days on market was 282 days in Los Gatos in April of 2009. The next closest behind that was 197 days. So you might make the argument, well, we had that one home that was out there as far as time is concerned, but the spread of the data here is actually pretty consistent, so I'm not going to call that extremely out of line as far as determining what the average days on market are. Now let's go ahead and do the breakdown here. Now, as I mentioned, one home sold before it was ever listed in the multiple listing service, 3 homes sold in the first 7 days, 8 homes sold in 8 to 30 days, 5 homes sold in 31 to 90 days, 5 homes sold in 90 to 180 days, and 3 homes sold in 180 days or more. Now, 48% of the homes sold in 30 days or less in Los Gatos. So while I think that the 60 to 70 day projection time for sellers is a good rule of thumb, for homes that are more aggressively priced, this 30 days is obviously happening to about half the folks out there who are listing their homes. So that's still pretty amazing. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the same data, days to sell just over past months. Excuse me. And this is going back all the way to December of 2007. And we'll see if there's anything we can get out of this that gives us an idea of trends. And these are difficult ones to determine what trends are, but we normally see in this time of year, if you'll look back to last year in April, we'll normally see a drop in the days on market. Simply because there's a little bit more activity at the beginning, and then once you hit June and July and August, if your sales numbers increase, you'll see usually a little bit of a boost in average days on market because you're selling off properties that have maybe been on the market longer than others. When you're getting your volume of sales up, this days on market number can often be a counter indicator to how well you're actually doing. For instance, a home that's been on the market for a much longer time, finally we get into a market where more homes are selling, so that's good news because we're selling more homes, but the days on market number will often go up because many of those homes were on the market longer. So this definitely isn't a number that you want to look at for gauging the health of the market unless you're fully aware that these numbers often will go up when sales go up. Okay, so don't if you see this number jumping dramatically, don't get too panicked. And for instance, last month in March, we had one property that had been on the market for so long, I really kind of artificially kicked that up to 118. I went back and looked at those numbers again, and it was. What's amazing is there was one property up there that had been up there for a long time, but there were several others as well. So I didn't call that specifically a statistically out there month, but there was sort of a borderline. But still, those numbers, given what we had then in the low sales, that's really what was kind of the shocker for last month. It's good to see that it ended up becoming a trend for Los Gatos. All right, now days to sell is actually down 41.53% from the previous month. Again, that was from a pretty outrageous month. That's 49 fewer days to sell your home than in March of 2009. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the sold home locations. We can see the pretty even dispersion here, actually. Not as usually it's a little bit more emphasized right around that quarter on the 17, and this month it doesn't seem to be doing that at all. We've got several properties at the west end, several properties at the east end, and then a nice little cluster in the middle. Not seeing any trends location-wise on properties that are getting sold here. Everybody who does a lot of shopping in Los Gatos, and I know I show quite a few properties in Los Gatos. There's so much of a draw there, and the downtown part of Los Gatos is such a draw. Being able to be within walking distance of that is nice for a lot of folks, although some of the traffic can get a little bit crazy. Once you get over to that far eastern end, that gets to feel an awful lot like the Almaden Valley area. So a lot of times you won't see quite as many homes selling on that end as you do in the central and some of the western areas. But this month we actually saw a pretty good dispersion of homes that sold. Now, I do appreciate y'all taking the time to listen to what I have to say on these market reports. As always, if you'd like to see the other reports that I publish or listen to my weekly podcast or reading of my articles on real estate, you can find those at my website at www.soldbyrobert.com. If you'd like to get in contact with me via email, just send those to robert@soldbyrobert.com. Or if you'd like to call me, just dial 408-852-0525. And if you're a user of AOL Instant Messenger, Google Talk, or Yahoo IM, my screen name is The Rebel Broker. Feel free to contact me that way. Or if you're a Skype user, Rebel Broker will work on that. Referrals are always appreciated. If you or anyone you know is interested in buying, selling, or investing in real estate in Silicon Valley, please feel free to get in touch. Or if you're someone who is frustrated about trying to find the right agent, please let me take on that responsibility for you. I will ask the right questions and get the right information, and depending on what your goals are, I'll find the perfect agent for you. So if you'd like to get in contact with me using any of the methods outlined above, I can get started on helping you reach your real estate goals. Thanks again for listening, and I will talk to you all next time.